Hello, everyone, and welcome to Claris Community Live. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce Albert Harum-Alvarez and Thomas Martinez from SmallCo to talk about bringing integrations to your FileMaker projects. And if you could start, click on those three app button, the little three squares to open the apps, and look at our Slido poll. We're just asking a couple of questions to get started to help Albert understand where you are currently with introductions. And so while you all do that, I'll let Albert introduce himself.
Yes. Hey, good to see you guys. Glad to be talking to my colleagues again. I'm Albert Harum-Alvarez, and I am fiddling at the moment. Let's see if I can pull this up. There we go. I'm here to speak to you about iterative development, which is something that we do again and again. Get it? That's kind of coder humor here. But iterative development can mean a lot of different things to different people and even to the same team. I'm here to talk about some very stark differences about what it can mean to do iterative development. And I am very blessed to have one of my dearest colleagues with me today, Tomas Martinez. Thanks for being here, Tomas. But in the background, the folks who contributed to this presentation include Rosalie Martir, our lead designer, Anya, lead developer, Yakov, one of our best API guys, and he handles all of our cloud services. And listen, it's great to be part of a team like this. And it's great to be reinforced that, I'm an old guy who has young people around him who keep me learning. So I got the scars to show for a long career, but I also have a great deal of optimism and knowledge about the way things are going today. You should listen to me because I have your best interests at heart, but I also have long experience with 4 vertical market apps, and you'll see a bit of them today. And then, of course, I know your work through the Design Masterclass. Rosemary, do you have a bit to say about the slides yet, or?
Yeah. Well, first, also, Tomas, do you want to just say hello? And Rosalie, just say hello and a few words about yourselves.
Rosalind first.
Oh, I didn't know Roz was there. Sorry, Roz.
She sneaked in.
Yeah, I was using the wrong password. Took me a moment. So hello everyone, I am Rosalind. I am here with you all from Puerto Rico, and I've been working with Albert for a while now and learned a lot, and looking forward to continue my learning experience and my work experience here with everyone in SmallCo.
Hi, this is me. My name is Tomas Martinez, and I also been working with SmallCo and Albert and the rest of the team for a good number of years, and I've learned a lot. And I think it's so good to share the knowledge that Albert has. So welcome everybody.
All right. And the poll results. So on average, how many integrations does a typical project contain? But the plurality is 42, at 43% is 2. 27% of people said more, and about 15% were both at 0 and 1. So 70% of projects have 2 or more. And then integration. Did it disappoint because it underdelivered, or amaze because even though it was drop dead simple? 80% say amaze. And Bob Shockey did call out, we've had both, so maybe that shouldn't have been a either or question. So, and yeah, so I hope that helps you, Albert, know where the audience is.
Yes.
And we have a few more questions we'll ask throughout the session today.
Bob, the crazy thing is sometimes there's an inverse relationship between how much work you put into an integration and how much it delivers for the client. I mean, there's nothing like spending like weeks on something. You show them the first glance and you're all proud, you know, busting your buttons about what you did. And they're like, so it just doesn't get them. Yet at the same time, you'll do something which is like some amazing first go at it. And their, you know, scales fall from their eyes. It's crazy how that works. Bob, that's probably been your experience as well. So listen, that leads into my first challenge to you all, is to understand that your best skill has a shadow side. You're good at coding, you're good at design, but maybe you do it too much. Said with all due respect, right? Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today, to be here for us. Your time is valuable and you're looking for something hopefully beneficial from me. And the first thing I say is to stop playing your strong suit. I know it's hard to hear, but I think it may be true. Now, second thing I'm challenging you with is that you can profit by being wrong in public on purpose. Now, who knows, maybe I'll give you a flying leap example of that today as I am speaking in public. And I might be wrong, but I don't think so, especially with this next notion. And that is that what you should be doing is leveraging position, not defending territory, right? So I'll talk about how you work now. And as I told you briefly, I know a bit about how you work, how I think you might work better. And then I'll show you some examples of Claris platform apps that we've built, evolving over time, and strangely enough, often becoming stronger, even though I feared that what we were doing was weakening them. If anyone already understands what I'm talking about, give me an amen on that one. So your work habits can be safe and comforting, but they can be traps. And you need to recognize that coding is compulsive. And Rosalind, design can be compulsive too, yes? So there's iterative development, yes, and there's iterative development. Yep, that's a real rocket. Yeah, it's going down. SpaceX Starship explodes. That was April of 2 years ago. So how do you approach something like that? Well, this is the European Space Agency. Amazing accomplishments, really respectable efforts on the world stage. Their cultural approach is that during launch, you don't jinx it. You don't cheer, you don't jump up and down, you know, you wait a respectful time until you're sure the launch is successful. And then there's this group. That's a standing ovation for a rocket exploding at SpaceX, in which the culture is to cheer explosions. Now, you've got to be quick to note, these are unmanned missions, right? They are also extremely measured, right? In other words, there's telematics and cameras all over the place. So you push to the edge and you push past the edge. And notice that what this means is that the question of any launch is, will this work? And the possible answers are yes or no. And when there's a no, it means you learn. So how do we do this? Of course, we can have actual prototypes that we test. We can test them in-house, hand them out to a client or patron and have them test it. But there is an even quicker way to have a little success and a little failure, and that is to ask a lot of questions, ask many questions. Now, what do I mean by this? Here's what the framing could be. Think of this as a kind of a prototypical question where you are going to answer and possibly show your ignorance, possibly show that you are not the all-seeing, omniscient, wise one who knows exactly what your client needs before they say it. that you could be wrong. So it goes like this. I was thinking, and then you insert a framing of the problem, a specific framing of the problem. And then you say, did I get that right? Now notice this is not saying, it's not an open-ended question. It's not saying, what should we do? It's not saying, what color should the button be, right? It's saying, how about if it went this way, and then casting a vision very specifically that allows your client or your patron to say, yep, yeah, looks good, let's try it, or no, because, and then you get the details, or you have to think about that. Every one of those questions then becomes a little trial balloon, right? An iteration. The easiest and cheapest way to iterate is with questions like this. And to do this, what you have to do is to let go of your habit, which, knowing you all, y'all are smart, is that you ask questions where you are correct. You have to purposefully frame a question that will be just a little bit off target, because by being off target, you're going to get to the answers where you learn, which is the no's and the not sures. Is that clear? I wonder in the chat, am I hitting with anyone? Tell us, is this making sense? Listen to this question and see if this rings true for you in any sense. So here's what I said to John in a recent meeting. Hey, John, we can send scannable Apple Wallet passes to staff whenever we issue bills of lading and weigh bills. Could that help us manage chain of custody for valuable parts in shipment? Now, you know, what I'm talking about is, let's say one of our staff takes in the back seat in the bed of his F-350, he takes a $5,000 transmission for a large crusher, right? And he's gonna transport it to the site. Well, there's an issue of chain of custody. So I'm saying, could Apple Wallet do that? Do some scanning so you know who's got what? Well, what John said to me is, no, not now. But you got me thinking about something, and I think what we need to do is A, B, and C to handle this issue of chain of custody. And then, you know what? Maybe after we do those, we'll come back to the Apple Wallet. So I provided enough of a field for the question that then an active, intelligent client can come in and supply the missing parts, right? And so we've got more ways to make that client happy, even though the answer is no, but that's not correct, because the answer was no. You get it? Because the answer is no, right? That's coming through.
Yep. And just there's a few comments, agreement in the chat. Just a quick reminder to everybody, when you're in chat, please change that little menu from all panelists to everyone so that everyone can see what you're commenting. But yes, you've got some, this is my experience as well. I often propose a scenario using staff names or positions, walking through specifics. Mike has mentioned the effective and efficacy facilitator role.
Cool. I mean, the inclusion of staff names is that kind of concreteness that when you ask these questions, it means you are not open-ended. You are very specific in your framing, specific enough that the person you're speaking to can respond to, well, what would Bill or Betty or John be doing, right? So that's an important point, the idea of referencing not only a persona, which may be the way that we think of these roles, not just a job description, but to say it's Milton, right? Milton is going to be handling this. What will he say about this? Or what will happen when he does this, right? So we have iterative dev, way number one. And this looks so familiar to me, having done this for decades now. So way number one results in wider tables, more fields, more reports, better authentication. Maybe we're going to factor our layouts by role so they can be more precisely targeted to that particular persona. We're porting desktop layouts to tablet. Maybe we're reskinning the UI, or my personal favorite, making aggregate calcs more performant. It's so fun to do that. But the point is, it's not always servicing your client. You've heard the story about Elon spending like 12 hours staying up all night, optimizing a chunk of code before he realized he could delete it. He could delete it. And that's the best kind of optimization, right? So these are good things to do. They're fine, but all of them can get out of hand. And so what I'm presenting to you is iterative dev way 0, the pirate way. And before we get off track with that big old boat in the picture, my exhaustive research tells me that throughout history, most pirates had small boats. Small boats. I'll give you an example. You probably know Blackbird's Queen Anne's Revenge. It's kind of the model for the Black Pearl in the Disney movie. Well, Blackbeard had a almost 2-year career in that ship until he lost his head in an unfortunate incident. His first mate on that ship was Black Caesar, a pirate who spent a lot of time right close to me, right kind of that direction from me here in Miami. Black Caesar had a 5 to 7 year career with boats about the size and configuration of the one that Dominic is pointing to. Small ships, shallow draft. I want you to keep that in mind, because I'm really not speaking about doing something in a big way ever. I'm always talking about small steps. And as Roz points out, that's part of the madness of SmallCo. We do things that way. So we'll go over these 6 in detail. But before we do, I just want to make sure you understand that this idea of piracy is not a metaphor. That when Uber came into the taxi cab ranks, it was like, what the heck is this? And why are you taking over our settled business? Isn't this against the law? It worked the same way with Airbnb and hotel rooms. And right here, there's these 3 guys by the payphone. They're really a suspicious looking bunch. And weirdly enough, 2 of them are named Steve. Maybe someone in the comments can recognize who's in that picture. So these 2 Steves, turns out that they had their first product that they could sell. It was a blue box that allowed them to hack phone calls, phone phreaking, right? So that's clearly at the edge of the law, but I don't want to focus on it being criminal. I'm focusing on the fact that these are tools that break the old rules and in their wake create new rules. And this is truly what happens with pirates. A pirate moves just beyond the growing edge of culture. And so do we, honestly. And that's the power that you can get on a repeated basis. Now, I want to point out here, this ship that I showed you earlier is from the late 1800s. I told you it's just like the ships that Black Caesar used in the mid to late 1700s by Elliott Key and Key Largo here in South Florida, right by today's Miami. This ship is from the late 1800s, so a little more than 100 years later, but it's a kick-ass ship. I mean, look at that thing. If Batman had a boat, that would be the boat. That would be the one, right? And so Commodore Monroe, he was sitting in his lair in Coconut Grove, and he was a wrecker. He was a shipwreck salvor. So he would head out when there was a wreck on the reef, and if he got there first, he could claim wrecking rights, which meant a lot of money, okay? And so he did that in that ship, and he won. Every time that he was out there and saw it, he was the first there. You can actually go see he has this boathouse that is very much like the Bat Cave kind of thing, right on the water. He can run from the second story of his house right to the boathouse and just take off. It's an amazing story. So what I'm telling you here is that there is not a one period of time in which there is the age of pirates. that over and over again, even as law changes, there is still the opportunity for this attitude. Miami-Dade County, as we know it now, was created by this boat, right? Just as later on, Miami-Dade County changed its taxi cab rules and its hotel stay rules. In the same way, it actually came into existence in its current form because this ship required them to create a new wreckers court. So there was one in the Keys and one in the mainland, based where Miami is today. So, we're not focusing on the illegality, the fact that what we do changes the rules, redefines the rules. Still happening today. Here is SeaTow, which if y'all come and rent your sailboat and you're not very good at sailing and you go around Biscayne Bay and y'all are having a great time and drinking too much and getting on a sandbar, just pull out your phone. There's an app for it, SeaTow. And the amount that they charge you is maybe almost as much as what the shipwrecker used to get for getting to that boat, right? It's a profitable business, this is my point. It remains most profitable remaining at that edge, right? So I'm asking you to develop your platform the way Black Caesar did, leveraging position, not defending territory, because it's putting you close to the things that you need. So it's pretty obvious that Black Caesar needs to get to the Gulf Stream because this is where the ships are going by, right? That's his point. But there is so much that he can access right in here. And most magical of all is that at this time, Biscayne Bay and Card Sound had freshwater upwellings so that Black Caesar's guys could just go and dip a barrel over the side in the middle of salt water and get fresh water. That's amazing. And understand that means that they didn't have to land over here, this mangrove fringe, which had 14-foot crocodiles, and then mangrove to hack on through to get to some water source on land. They didn't even have to land their boats. Now, stick with me, guys. But yes, this is a tool you may have heard of. I'm talking about an integration for which my experience of integrating Dayback recently with a client was the same as like finding this fresh water just welling up from the middle of salt. Let me describe it to you. We knew that we were going to integrate a calendar for a client. And we said, okay, there's obviously a number of ways we can do this to a number of different levels of service. There's way 1, the easiest, and there's way 2, a little bit harder, and there's way 3. But just so we can see how well this is going to do, let's just export a bunch of data and just import into Dayback Raw. No integration happening. And we showed this like 0.5 approach to the client. They were like, oh, great, that was fast, we're done. They loved it so much, even though we really hadn't integrated anything yet, because they could see it with fresh eyes. And that's the power of these integrations. Some of you are converted. I'm preaching to the folks who've done this already. But for that 15%, go for it. And don't go deep. I mean, go for something that is even shallow at the start in order to make your way. Rosemary, should I stop for a moment? Anything that you had in there? Is this one of our stopping points or a little bit farther?
I don't know. I see nothing in chat.
Okay,
So,
we'll keep on going then.
yeah,
So,
if you
guys,
have comments, please do call them out in chat and we'll have a conversation.
So I'll go over all 6 of these point by point with examples. But before we go there, I do want to challenge you in a bigger way. Don't code. Coding is great. Coding is fun. Coding is wonderful. Coding is fed my children. It's feeding my grandson. But coding is futzing. Be careful, especially today, when you have tools available to help you. So let me go ahead and review. I mentioned our approach to Dayback, and I said, look, there's a number of you can go shallow, you can go deep. This is the kind of prompt you can give an AI to help you out, right? So let's look at 3 ways to integrate FileMaker with Slack, starting with building a URL that creates a Slack message and the FileMaker calculation, all the way to addressing the Slack API directly from FileMaker. And Slack has a pretty darn good API. If you have not done this much, just know that APIs vary in quality tremendously. And some good companies that start out with a middling API revise it and make it better. And you can ask a tool like ChatGPT about that. And you'd get the idea that your first integration may not be Oracle NetSuite, but it could be Slack. And you may also know that this first method may not last. It may already be on the list for deprecation, right? Which means at some point in the future, it might go away. But I want to encourage you that what you're looking for when you're building trust with a client on these things is that first success. And you can use a method that you know may be deprecated at some future point because it'll allow you to get that first framing, and they'll say, well, this is good, but now I need to. But if all you're doing is doing that very simplest form of integration, it still does you and your client, your patron, a great service. How many of us are doing these integrations with the help of a tool like ChatGPT? Let me know. In the meantime, I'll continue here with number 1. Profit from alliances, not expansion. So my rule before was to leverage position, not territory. This is what it means to do that you profit from an alliance with another piece of software, right? So JobQ is our wonderful, beautiful tool that does digital agency management. So it handles media plans, media buys, jobs for teams that are doing advertising or social media. And here, in this case, it's a firm that runs a couple hundred automobile dealerships. And we're creating all the content that they'll use to advertise their products. And so they're already using Slack, but there's no connection. How much of a connection will be helpful to them? As it turns out, something as simple as whenever you have a rush job over here in JobQ, hop up a Slack message to the appropriate team and say, hey, there's a rush job over here. And in the message, there will be a clickable link. You click, it opens a brand new window in FileMaker so you don't take over their current window, and they can see this new job, but they need to have a heads up about. Super simple, super easy to implement. But this is the kind of integration that feels like all your neighbors just took the fences and hedges down, and you have this massive backyard to deal with. It's very powerful and very simple. I think that's the kind of thing that maybe Bob, Shockey, and the others have experienced. Tell us more about it, if you will, in the chat.
Yeah, there's a couple comments in chat about using ChatGPT as well. Tobias says it helps, but still produces many failed attempts. Sean said, I've used AI to troubleshoot integrations, and more than once it's solved problems caused by inaccurate or incomplete API documentation. And one says, saves time in many situations, but you have to be able to identify when it's wrong. And Patrick said, use it, but often get commands that don't exist. So,
the crazy thing is there's a term for AI making up stuff, say hallucinating. But as far as I'm concerned, API docs can hallucinate as well. Certain of them just seem to, no, you said it's supposed to work that way, but it didn't, right? So this is where we live. And so what this means is you are in a position to evaluate information and quality of what you see, and then make the decisions, which will always be the case, right? So now
Yeah,
let's
here's
take on. Oh, go ahead,
a
please.
quick thing. So Jason says, what I was taught is that the more integrations you have in your solution, the more that could go wrong.
Interesting. Okay, here's the number one way to make sure your integrations are clear. Specify the direction of data flow. Another way of saying the same thing is where is your source and where is your data of record. You could actually get super complex with an implementation and keep it one way, right? Keep your data pushing from your system to the ERP, to Oracle, to Acumatica, to whatever it might be. If you keep it one way, it is so much simpler. There's something, I don't know, geometric about the complexity that comes from integrations that go bi-directional, right? So I would say that's the first thing to keep in mind. I hope that rings true. Let me give you an example next. And so this next integration is one that actually might cause you pause, because there is some overlap between what this tool does and what JobQ does. Both JobQ and Trello manage workflow. Now, they do it in very different ways, and thankfully we're old and wise by this time, and we're not going to try to build our own Kanban inside of FileMaker, right? Because that's a commodity service that's available from many other people, right? And I told you before that that's not necessarily defensible territory. You're not going to, that's not a strategic position to be in, to have the heart of your tool be something that can be commodified. However, if there is a place, as there is in JobQ, where a specific workflow can be supported by pushing data to Trello, well, that's a horse of a different color. And in that case, you don't have to worry about Trello replacing your tool, because you still have so much that is custom, bespoke, tailor fit to your client that Trello just won't do, because that's not the kind of tool that Trello is. So you can feel safer with that approach. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so having softened you up with number one, which is a pretty easy one to listen to, here's a tough one. When do you strategically retreat? Our first vertical market app, which goes all the way back to when we were working with Rosemary at Harvard, was PressFile, which is corporate communications tool that was very successful in the early days. Very soon, we began to notice that there were commodity tools in the marketplace that were beginning to do the same job. At that time, it was, hey, Beth, it was Constant Contact and MailChimp, and there were actually quite a few of them. And of course, maybe I'm biased. PressFile did a better job than any of them, but not better enough. You know, that term satisficing. Yeah, you could be satisfied by what was offered by the commodity tools. And so we knew that we should move in a lateral position that got us to a more defensible and strategic place. And so we developed PressWorks, starting with Harvard, but then going on to the University of Minnesota and University of North Carolina and University of Chicago. And we ended up with a tool that was specifically designed to service academic presses. And it's still in service. It's doing quite well. PressFile is still out there in those clients in certain spots. But interestingly enough, in Germany, we were able to do a strategic retreat from PressFile's front end in FileMaker to end up with a front end that's completely a modern web app. And there are a number of integrations, other tools that we've built along with it that service clients mostly in German language markets, but also other countries across Europe. So we've stayed with it by noticing when we were going to be commodified. I hope that makes sense. So number 3, let's say you're kind of haunted by this idea that whatever tool you will integrate with is going to be the thing that eats your lunch, that takes you over, right? Have you considered integrating with headless tools? I guess a very simple way of talking about what a headless tool is to say that a headless tool is one where they're basically saying to you, the developer, hey, we're not trying to get your client. In fact, we're going to have no direct relationship with your client except through whatever you build. So we're just in the background. We're here to help. Headless tools. And there's headless CRMs, headless ERPs, headless DAMs, and sometimes even like combinations that do 2 things together quite well, like Cloudinary and Storyblock, which give a damn, and CMS. Sorry about that.
And just for those who aren't seeped in the creative industry, DAM is Digital Asset Manager.
Thank you for decoding for me. Sorry.
Yes, and I just also want to call out that, like, Albert's curious about if you've made these kinds of retreats by integrating with commodity tools. So if you have a second, while he continues, just pop your response into Slido.
Yeah, tell me. I mean, it's a little bit of a hard thing to say, to have built something and then to realize at this point, the best thing for you to do is to maybe forego that territory that you conquered with much blood and toil and give it up to a tool that actually may strengthen your position. Okay, so serve the unapt. It was, I think, 2 Claris lives ago that Rob Holsey was speaking about the T chart again. And part of that T is this notion of getting to folks who maybe you haven't been reaching yet. I do want to make the point that for folks who have been developing on the Claris FileMaker platform for a while, you think of building as a tool as a pretty big deal. When you create these new apps for the unapt, for a service tech, or for a salesperson on the road, or for a field technician, or for a vendor, or for a specific client, you're not doing so much for them. You don't have to do as much for them as you do for your back office folks who have to do so many things with your app so that your app is in front of them all day. So Upfleet, our tool for high value, heavy assets, is a tool that does have screens meant for the folks who are actually running the business every day, for the team that needs to have a lot of information in many different formats. But it also has a series of satellite apps that serve the unapt. And when you do that, it means that your new development task is relatively small, more doable. And it works a lot like that dayback integration that we did, where even when we hadn't even gotten the thing off the ground yet, hadn't really launched, they're already seeing the benefits because your scope is narrow and targeted. It doesn't mean the scope is small, okay? Having a narrow and targeted scope can often be a big benefit, if that makes sense. Okay. Okay, second to last, we're almost done. And this slide, of course, doesn't have much to read. This is my last attempt at humor in the slides here. And so building FileMaker headless? Well, sure. The thing about the Claris platform is it offers kind of, in FileMaker, it offers a tool that can be a front end to other databases. And it can also support a backend. It can be your database schema for a front end that you write in React, Node.js, or whatever it might be. And in kind of the farthest reduction of the notion of strategic retreat, FileMaker can be nothing but an ETL tool. So did a presentation a while back on ETL: extract, transform, and load. So this is what happens when you take data from a source, you bring it into, for instance, FileMaker, which is a great tool for doing ETL. And then you work on it, you massage it, you make it do whatever it needs to do, and then you push it back out, maybe to another tool or maybe back to the same tool. So this could often work with a relatively difficult system. Oracle, it's nothing personal, but maybe they went to the Oracle guys and they said, yeah, we'll get to you later. And if you're the guy who can make that happen in FileMaker with an ETL process, you are important. You are strategic. So my buddy Salman Sheikh, who works with us, Salman says, it's like this. If you got FileMaker working with Oracle, you got a chair at the table. You're in the room at every moment. There's maybe no more strategic place to be. Okay? It's about that position. Does that make sense? Any amens from the crowd? Who's doing ETL? Anybody? While you're answering that, let me get to the very last of these. I'm showing you here Upfleet with its satellite of resources, with Upfleet strategically at the center of all these. And what I'm saying even more than that is that what our app is providing is not a database. I'm old enough to remember when people have said, oh, FileMaker, it's the database. Not anymore. No, it's not anymore. FileMaker is the place for data coherence. It's the place where the whole narrative is present, where you can tell the story, right? So you've got site work happening at one place. It's true that over here you might know what the weather is at that site, where the site is. You might know what's happening with that Komatsu loader or the Caterpillar excavator. You might know how much is in the fuel tanks by looking here. All around here, these are all individual blind men and the elephant. But you're presenting the whole elephant, right? And that's what makes your position the most strategic one, right? And I just want to make sure that you understand that once you have this strategic position, it almost doesn't matter what direction these things go. In other words, if you are upgrading their Acumatica ERP, let's say they previously had a QuickBooks implementation and you move it to Acumatica, okay, they're happy when you do it right, right? Or if they first said, no, let's outsource the expensing to Expensify, and they're kind of happy, then they say, no, bring it back and do it yourself in a little satellite app. They're happy both times. Do you understand? When you create an API for the fuel tanks and you go to vendor number one, okay, that was cool. But then when you're able to upgrade to their second vendor who has a much better tool, right? You just gave them a massive upgrade, but you didn't have to give it to them. However, you get the credit, okay? You get the credit anyway. And that's very, very important, right? So there are things you could not likely do on your own, like translate Spanglish. But with FileMaker's support of LLMs and tuning and ChatGPT, you can do it, right? Now, some of these things, we're just going to point out that parts, this is very particular and not commodifiable. I'm giving this example once again to point out that what you're going for is how custom, how tailored can you be with your client? There's plenty of tools out there that let you order parts and restock inventory and stuff like this. But for many construction companies, including our clients here, they have distributed inventory. They have trailers on site, and then they have centralized inventory as well. This client is about to have centralized inventory in 2 different states, right? So when that happens, you want to consider that this might stay in your hands because it's strategic, and you can do a better job than the commodified app that you download, right? I hope that makes sense. So listen, guys, you have a picture here of the way that we can follow the pirate way. We put ourselves centrally in the location where we can maximize our leverage and our influence, and we don't have to own the property, right? We don't have to be the one to maintain all of this, but we're the ones who coordinate the whole thing, right? This is what we're speaking about here. And so this is how our apps might look down the road, having embraced this. I believe that this is a model of the way FileMaker platform apps can work. And I believe that this is a model that can support you down the road with tools that have a long life of profitability and serving your clients. So I challenge you a bit to consider that even the things you do best may have a shadow side, that you might want to at times be wrong in public, that could benefit you. And then I spoke about some specific examples of how we work differently and how that actually helped us, as opposed to my fears that it might hurt us. And with this in particular, I hope to encourage you to make the jump if you haven't. And if the current number of integrations on your platform is 2, consider that the number may need to be 7 or 12. So at this point, I'd love to hear more about what you're doing with your clients and your apps now here in this session. I think we have some time left. And also, please join us for Naples FileMaker Week in Italy for more discussions of the Pirate Way. We'll be there. And of course, bring the Design Masterclass to your team. I've been with many of you already. You've honored me to bring you on site and speak to your team. I love that work. It does help, and I look forward to doing that again with you.
And I will personally vouch for the Design Masterclass. I think I've attended 3 in my long career. And I think the first time was, it was when I was probably had only been at Harvard for a few years, so 25 or more years ago. And it fundamentally changed the way that I work, and I think made me, at the time when I was still a developer, it made me a better developer. And then going forward, it made me a better systems engineer because it helped me understand how to ask questions of clients.
Thank you, Rosemary. That's very kind. And thanks to the team as well for being here. The Design Masterclass is often done as a team effort. So you might even see some of these people at the Masterclass if you do have one on site.
Yeah, and I just want to also, there's been a lot of comments about, thank yous. Jason said, this is eye-opening. I have to change my mindset about how I build solutions. Patrick said he's inspired. Thank you. Beverly also endorses the masterclass. And just wanted to share the results of our strategic retreat question. So many people did say they have been able to shrink solutions. Many going to general accounting, that was just over 50%, also close to 40% going to CRM. And then, a few people said chat, content management, ERP systems, and smallest on that was digital asset management.
Okay.
And then where people are considering that work, that was pretty flat across all of them. The most was going to chat, so Teams, Slack, etc.
Mhm.
or content management systems. So it kind of feels like people have already done accounting and CRM, and now they're looking to chat, content management. And then for the systems where people have done that, word cloud, or where I showed the word cloud, where they have done this, the answers given were to a learning platform, to sales tax calculation.
Hmm.
And then one person said, you know, other than retreating, they're still working on replicating functionality by customer requests. Because for them, it's too costly to overcome the learning curve to integrate with something else.
You know, I do want to point out, because I think there's more than one person in the call from Mexico, that Ibrahim Vitar has a category of integration that I haven't really spoken of here. But I know it's not pertinent in the U.S., but there are countries in which you do need to report certain financials into the authorities. And so, you know, Ibra, are you still offering a tool that allows folks to do that? I hope Ibra is still on the call. A brilliant developer.
Yes, I would like to say that not just Ibrahim, but created databases in Mexico. They also have this kind of integration from many years ago. It's something that you have to do in Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Creative databases in the house. Welcome, guys.
Yeah. And I do want to say we will be having a community live September 11th. We're going to take an extra week off because of the Labor Day holiday as people are going back to school and everything. And for that session, Mark La Rochelle will be joining me, and we're going to do a deep dive on a few of the on 3 integration use cases using the new generate response from model and perform find and perform SQL with natural language script steps. So you'll come away from that session with some real business cases and demo files, downloadable demo files, so you can take apart our examples.
Can I offer something in there, Rosemary? Speaking about that in particular,
Sure.
you may note a theme in my presentation, where it was something like Albert was afraid of something not working out, but it did. It's a recurring theme, maybe in my life in general. But I spoke to a client about this idea of translating Spanglish, and I said, no, Spanglish is going to be, that's going to be rough. That's going to be hard, because it's this mix of English terms, often, you know, specific to the industry and all that. Not only did ChatGPT, the Milan worked on this, not only did it pull it off perfectly, but it did a syntax analysis that allowed us to break off the condition from the recommended action. Like, if in other words, it said, there's a strange noise in the motor, probably want to get a mechanic out. Well, all of that was perfectly parsed out so that you could grab it, and our action focus, which is to turn around and make a report, was already set up by what ChatGPT 5 did. And so sometimes, usually, things are not as hard as you might think. So just encouraging you to jump. Nadie aprende de cabeza ajena. No one understands from someone else's head, but hopefully you'll take the lesson from me that, you know, it's not always as bad as you might think.
Yeah, and I do want to warn you. I think Tyler shared the link to register for our next session. I don't know if the full description is on the page yet, but that is the right link. And so if you click it right now, it'll look kind of weird, but you will register for that session, and we'll get the description and branding all updated later today. And just as we close out, just want to share the results of our closing poll also. So first, have you ever seen cases of overcoding? Looks like everybody who responded has seen all of them, or at least half of them. So 70% they've jumped to a coded solution when a workflow change would have been enough. 55% building more features, not for the client, but it's fun to build them.
Okay.
And 50% have optimized code that should have just been removed. I'm looking at the one improvement. Assess older solutions for opportunities to offload tasks to other services. Obtain a pirate ship. Start using ChatGPT for guidance. Stop reinventing the wheel. Go back to asking questions. And I think we've sparked some interest. 45%, or actually 80% of people say they are confident or very confident to evaluate strategic integrations to improve their apps.
Excellent.
So you
If I may add one little thing, is the more I hear about the whole process of integration, it just sounds also, basically like just doing delegating, it's about delegating when it's necessary. And a lot of people in leadership roles tend to have like an issue with that, and that's when
No
they
me diga. No me diga.
they hit a
Listen.
brick wall.
You're talking about.
No, but in general, I've noticed that it happens, right? So maybe for developers, if we think about it like that, this is, I'm not replacing myself, I'm delegating. And then
Wow, that's so good. That's so perfect. Right? I don't know. That should have been one question about folks leading a team being control freaks. Anyone?
Yeah.
Guilty? Guilty as charged?
All right.
Good. Thank you, Roz.
Yes. All right, everyone. You have about a minute left to sneak in questions for Albert. Yes. Umberto said, in small companies that evolve every day and change their processes permanently, FileMaker and these techniques are a must.
Yes.
Gracias, Albert.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Thank you, Umberto.
All right. Well, everyone, it was good to see you. We'll see you back here in 3 weeks. Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Tomas. Thank you, Ruslan. Thank you, Tyler, for keeping things going. And